So I'm going to click my second button, just kind of talking through this so you know what I'm up to.
I hear you. I talk out loud or think out loud all the time.
All right. Perfect.
No worries.
Thanks, Brian. So, all right, I'm coming on back to the Zoom. Okay, perfect. Well, I just want to say hello to everybody. I'm Allison Madison from Wisconsin Saltwise, and very excited today to have Brian Pickworth here from Farmington Hills, Michigan. Yes, you heard that right. Brian's joining us from across the lake. Brian and I actually met last fall out in Colorado at the APWA Snow and Ice Conference. So it was really wonderful to chat with him there. And I gave him a little nudge at the time and asked him if he might be willing to speak about calibration. I knew already that he was quite the expert because I had stumbled across a YouTube video that his team had put together years ago, and just really valued that resource and his knowledge in the field. So yeah, excited to have Brian join us. And for those of you who are new or newer to Saltwise webinars, since we are live streaming this on YouTube, you can type any questions that you have into the chat, and then I'll be able to ask those of Brian at the end. If for some reason the chat doesn't work, you can always email me, wisaltwise@gmail.com, and I'll also put that into the chat. But yeah, without further ado, I think I'll turn it over to Brian and I'll let you jump into calibration.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Great.
All right. I'll share my screen here. Hopefully everything's going to work.
Looks great.
Okay. Thanks for everybody for joining us today. I know some people probably got 60 degrees and some people probably got some different weather. We've been, so basically Farmington Hills, Michigan is northwest of the city of Detroit. We're in the southeastern Michigan quadrant. Very lucky to be with Farmington Hills for over 31 years now. I'll kind of go through my spiel here in a minute, but anyways, we've had some crazy weather here the last at least month, from snow to rain, a lot of freezing rain last week, and that's not fun, not only for Rose, but Alice and I were talking earlier about forestry. So anyways, they asked me to share some thoughts on calibration today, so hopefully some of this will help you. And if even after this or next week or next year or whatever, if you want to reach out to me, I got my info at the bottom there with the last slide. Don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll try to help you in any way we can. All right, so Saltwise calibration, March 1st already. So I started as a laborer back in '91, worked my way up through the ranks to my current position of road maintenance supervisor. 14 years on the road and 18 years being on call and all that fun stuff. I won't go through all this stuff, but I've been on the National APWA Snow and Ice Committee for many years. My current responsibilities include all that stuff listed, but my true passion is snow and ice control. Really enjoy it. It's challenging in Michigan, especially southeastern Michigan, because we don't always get lake effect, but we get all kinds of different, freezing rain, light snow, sometimes lake effect a little bit, streams across from Lake Michigan. It's crazy sometimes in our city, the challenges we have from basically end October, early November, all the way through the middle of April. So again, just a little landmark here. We're in if you hold your hand up, we're in the southeast corner of Michigan. A little bit about our city. We maintain more than 700 lane miles of roads. So almost 500 miles of local roads. That includes 22 miles of gravel roads that we still grade, and got a few parking lots that we grade and maintain. Throw that in a mix with almost over 170 miles of major road lane miles. Can be quite challenging sometimes. We're basically a bedroom community with light industrial. The big bullet point here on this slide is our residents are really expect a high level of service. We've honestly spoiled them throughout the years, and even through the downturn in 08, 09, we lost a lot of people due to a VSP early buyout. Try to build them staffs back up over the last 15, 13 years. And it's we're slowly getting back there. But again, we were an accredited agency in 2017. We just reaccredited through the process through the APWA a few years ago. That's a great tool if you really want to do some self-assessment of your agency and write the Bible, if you will, on the operations of your agency. It's a great program. So just give you a visual of our road network. We're basically 36 square miles. So prior to 1970 something, we were a township. We were 36 square miles. We are basically 33 square miles, with the exception of the gray area that sits inside of where it says Farmington there, like sections 27 and some of 28. But again, just kind of gives you our road miles, but it gives you a visual of major roads. All the color routes are ours. The rest of them are county and MDOTs. And then all the local roads, exception of the gray areas, that's all of our local road network. So it's quite a large road network. I think it says we're the 9th or 10th largest now in the state. So getting over to calibration, I borrowed this from either Clear Roads or one of the APWA handbooks, but basically before the beginning of each snow fighting season, you really should obviously put your trucks together, go through them, check for hydraulic leaks, all that fun stuff, but definitely calibrate them. Whether you have an old school sander valve with just spinner and auger settings, or you have a high techy, Rexroth, StormGuard, what have you, controller, you really should know what you're putting out, what you're asking the controller to put out, and make sure it's accurate. For me, it's not just for the safety of my public, but it's consistent goals. It's a good starting point, if you will. Times when my staff comes in to do the major roads, I just leave a note on the counter in case I'm out in the loader and say, all right, let's start this one at 300 pounds of lane mile, pre-wet for sure. For running granular, we do run a lot of liquid as well in some events, some warmer events, but it's a good starting point. And then we give them the latitude and the flexibility to adjust, because we all know every event's different and every event usually changes from the front end to the back end. The other big bullet point here is I should mention is environmental sustainable. I'll be honest with you, when I was an operator back in the early 90s, we were putting down probably well above 800, 1,000 pounds lane mile easily. The reason why I can tell you that is because I know historically how much salt we've used, and we'll touch on that here in a minute. But Eagle, which is kind of like the Michigan DNR, different version of that, they are doing audits. They're currently doing some audits at public agencies around us, and they are asking for documentation now. Are you calibrating your trucks? How many times per season are you calibrating your trucks? If you have mechanical failure, all that good stuff. So if not just doing the right thing and trying to follow best practices is enough, just think about maybe those audits that might be coming down the road for you in your agency. Another reason, a couple of reasons, and these are kind of silly, but would you trust a pacemaker? If the doc was going to put something in your chest and it wasn't calibrated, probably doesn't make sense to put that pacemaker in if they haven't tested it and calibrated it to make sure it's running properly. A big one for us is, do you have a good hydrometer? Check your salt brine. Do you have a refractometer? Does that need to be calibrated to make sure you're running a consistent 23.3% on your salt brine side? Something simple as torquing your lug nuts. You want to make sure that wrench is fairly accurate to make sure you're getting the right torque on those lug nuts. So obviously, big safety issue if you're losing wheels out on the road. For us, it was all those, but it was mainly best practices. We've got a lot of lane miles. Be honest with you, we didn't even really start calibrating until about 16 years ago. And I know that sounds like a long time, but a lot of agencies have been calibrating longer than us, which is awesome. But there's still a lot of agencies out there that you're just starting to learn. We're trying to figure out what the value is of calibrating. So that's why I bring that up. Again, we're a big user of liquids. We have a huge salt brine facility, a lot of storage tanks, all that fun stuff. We are probably actually under 5,000 tons the last 5 years. Annual average, we're probably between the 4 and 4,500 range, depending on, again, how many events, what kind of events they are. Pretty proud of that because I think back in the 90s, we were at our high water mark was easily 10,000 tons of salt. And we've since then grown on lane miles. So to cut that in half or more, I feel like we're heading in the right direction, but we're trying to keep that same level of service, which is tough sometimes, but it can be achieved with light training and a lot of good buy-in from your staff. So I'm not going to talk about all these. I kind of covered some of these, but again, it's a good tool to measure what your materials are and the expectations of your crew and the public. For me, it's a consistent level of service, a good starting point for each event. Budget. I truly believe if you calibrate your equipment and get the buy-in from your crews, you definitely will save on salt, and obviously it's going to help you with your budget because salt is not cheap. When I started back in 04 measuring all of our salt, it was about 24 hours a ton. We're well over 60 hours a ton now. I'm sure I don't have to tell all you that. I know there's a lot of agencies that pay well up to 100 hours a ton, depending on logistics, where you're getting your salt from, the trucking and all that. But anything that can drive you to do the right thing and maintain best practices is a good thing. Resources, train. We try to train as much as we can. Our partners in arms, our fire department and our police, they're constantly training. It should be the same thing for us. We're all first responders, and I believe that's a very important thing to do. Obviously, it's a balance. It's hard to do that sometimes when you got an ice storm. It just happened last week, and you're trying to get stuff picked up and make things safe. But again, if there's a golden opportunity for training such as we're doing today, take advantage of it. Again, buy-in is huge. Your crews have got to buy into calibrating. We actually have all of our operators calibrate their own trucks. I do have a couple of champions that really know how the controllers work, and the mechanics, they chip in to help out if we got a bad sensor or whatnot. Equipment build. Think about that for not just calibration, but updating your equipment at that time. You got a $250, whatever, $1,000 piece of equipment, a controller at whatever it may be, $5,000-$7,000. That's a little piece of the pie if you're spending that kind of money. To me, it's a really small cost to get a consistent level of service and try to save on some materials. It does work with AVLs very well. You can keep an eye on stuff. You can run reports if you have AVL. I'm not going to get into that, but our AVL was not well received at the beginning, but it's coming to grow on our operators, and it's really gone a long way as a huge tool to use. Helps reporting for material, like I said, if you have it tied into your AVL, if you have a new controller that's compatible. Your pre and post winter storm meetings, you can bring stuff up about calibration. I had one of our lady operators approach me about a month ago. Had a truck go down we normally sand with. She went out and sanded with her V-Box. Typically run salt out of there. In a lot of these controllers, you can calibrate for each material. Very important to think about. Everything weighs differently and everything flows differently when it comes to materials. Testing materials, calibration, you can really narrow down to what may work good at 300 pounds, but this other material might work good at 200 pounds. So something to think about. Again, you're going to have issues no matter what. We're in a really crappy environment when it comes to corrosion, your sensors, all that fun stuff. So again, just things to think about, why you might want to calibrate if you haven't started doing that already. My good friend Diana Clonch shared this slide with me. If you think about a lot of agencies, especially in the Midwest, spend up to 50% of their annual budget just on snow and ice control. And what do you have to show for that at come April or May or whenever your winter shuts off for you? Not much except for safety, which is huge. But again, the snow's gone, the ice is gone. You're on to ditching, sweeping, forestry, whatever you do. Just think about that as a diminishing return on your investment other than public safety, which is huge. But again, it's not like you're out there improving roads, repaving stuff, rebuilding catch basins, whatnot. So just something to think about. That's a huge hit to some people's budgets, and calibration is one way you can save some money. All right, come on, clicker. So again, we started back in 06. A lot of our operators were like, what are we doing? We just hook our trucks up. If we have no leaks and everything's working, the outer's working, the spinner's working, we're good to go. So it took a little time to get buy-in from our crews and why we were doing it. Try to get over the big brother, fear, all that fun stuff. But anyways, we've been doing it now almost 17 years, I guess. We're in 2023 here. So basically, older 5-axle or single axle 5-yarder truck, we call them here in Michigan. Tiny pre-wet tank. We're up to 400 gallons of pre-wet on most of our trucks, depending on if it's swappable or not. But anyways, every time that truck leaves the yard, you're at least $300 just installed alone, not including the liquid, not including the labor, not including the fuel, all that good stuff, right? Tandem, same thing. Almost doubles in price just in the granular walking out the door. So just think about the money you're saving every time you load up with just the granular alone. We do still lean on our vendors and our neighbors, but mainly our vendors and manufacturers to help us understand what our equipment's doing, train us on our equipment, and support us on our equipment. It's very big. If you're speccing stuff out, just think about that. It's not always savings and low bid. It might be best product for your value. We call them RFPs here in Michigan, request for proposals. And we've really started turning the corner on that. Just something to think about. But again, your vendors typically are here to help you. They want to support you. They want their stuff to work well for you. They don't want you having a bunch of headaches in the middle of the night or in the middle of the day or whenever your event is. So just don't be afraid to lean on your vendors for help. Again, we believe in as much training as we can get in, whether it's the vendors coming in, since we're post-COVID, trying to get back into the potlucks, trying to share experiences, share stories with your peers, workshops as much as you can. If you can't host them, it'd be a great thing for even a small community to invite a couple of your neighbors in, bring a couple vendors in, do a workshop. It's a great thing. So beginning the calibration, again, we start probably in September, early October, start going through all of our equipment, make sure everything's good, especially your hydraulic system, all that fun stuff that controls. We got mostly hydraulically driven, augers, spinners, our liquid pumps, all that fun stuff's mostly hydraulic, but there is a lot of electrically driven stuff out there that probably needs some maintenance too. So just things to think about when you get ready for this season, which I know we're already halfway over, but just things to think about when you're calibrating. You definitely want everything to be properly maintained so you can get an accurate drop when it comes to materials, whether it's granular or liquid. This is one of our really old 3-winter checklists here. What's missing here? There's no checkoff for calibration. Our new checklists actually have 3 different calibration points in there, and I'll go over that. It's not just granular anymore for us. So just something to think about. If you don't have a checklist, if you do, make sure that everything's checked off for you and everybody's happy with it between the mechanics and the operators. So again, granular's huge, but liquids is huge too. When we're talking about either pre-wetting at 10, 15, 20 gallons per ton, you kind of want to know how much pre-wet you got in there and how much pre-wet can you put on per ton. If you're loading up every time, depending on the pre-wet tank size, you kind of want to do the math. Get the max if you can, in my opinion, pre-wet down to that granular so you get less bounce and scatter. But again, it's not just granular. You really should calibrate liquids. Another big point with liquids is if you're out pre-treating, or we call it anti-icing, you dang well want to make sure that if you're doing 35 or 45 gallons a lane mile, all your roads are consistently treated. We tried doing without ground speed when we first started doing anti-ice, and it's tough to try to get a consistent speed in traffic, right? So try to spend a little extra money, try to justify that if you're upgrading your equipment. You definitely want a controller that's going to go up and down just with your ground speed when it comes to both of them, granular and liquids, if you can. If not, try to get there. I've touched on this a little bit ago. Again, every material flows differently. You got different abrasives, you got grit, you got millings, you got sand, you got rock salt. Liquids too, really. I mean, calcium can flow a little different than a salt or a well brine. If you're throwing in there a little organic, it's going to get a little thicker. It's probably going to get a little heavier for you. So just things to think about when you're calibrating, see what kind of options you have in your controllers and use them. I mean, they're there tools for you to help you and try to help you do your job. Just a good representation of how we sand gravel roads. We try to go in the middle when it's safe to do so. Again, calibration can affect how many tons per lane mile you're putting out, especially when it comes to sand and gravels for us, and how your spread pattern is as well too. So just different things to think about when it comes to different materials. If you're just starting out, you don't need one of those fancy scales that I had 2 or 3 pictures there prior. We used to just use a bucket and a tarp, weigh out your material for your catch test. If you've been on YouTube, you've probably seen a lot of people calibrating on there. You got to have a catch test. Got to get that weight, whatever it is. If it's an old school controller with just revolutions on the auger shaft, get your catch test. Do that with your chart, or the newer controllers, you either enter that catch test weight or gallons. If it's liquid, put it back in the controller, let it do the math. And most of the newer controllers will do the math for you. But again, you don't need a big fancy scale. You just need basically a bucket, a tarp, and shovel, and a human scale. And you can weigh it out simply like that. A lot of the suggestions on there, just don't be intimidated by this process. It's fairly easy. Again, if you're just doing just the old sander valves, like I said, drop tailgate spreader or live bottom spreader, and you just got a spinner and an auger, very, very good instructions on clear roads, APWA, Minnesota DOT. Everybody's got a lot of good instructions on these. A lot of good YouTube videos out there that walks you through what your catch test is, lets you do your math, and it'll approximately tell you how many miles per hour and how many tons per lane mile you're putting out. And that's fine. It works great. If you get into the fancier stuff, like I said, those controllers will do the math for you as long as you're getting an accurate catch test, as long as that controller is functioning properly with all the sensors feeding back to it. Just a simple way of calibrating a walk behind liquid sprayer that we use on our sidewalks. Just changing the fan nozzle on there. You're gonna need to get more or less flow. So just a simple way of calibrate that piece of equipment. Again, I talked about sander valves. So some of you've probably seen these, some of you haven't, but this is what I grew up on up until probably late 90s. We started phasing in new controllers. But you got 1 through 10 or 11, whatever your sander valve is for your auger circuit. And then you got 1 through 10 or 11 for your spinner circuit. Basically, the higher number, the faster flow that's going to give you. Then you got an on and off switch. Again, it don't have to be all the new fancy stuff. You can still calibrate this type of equipment very easily. The newer stuff, I'm not going to lie to you, calibrates a lot quicker, as long as, like I said, you're getting an accurate catch test. And we kind of combined old school with new school. So when the 550 first came out, and we were running 3 spray bars, see the 3 toggles on top up here for our spray bars, to keep our operators' eyes either on their mirrors or on the road where they should be, instead of trying to fumble around, hit the controller. We've got 3 toggles now for center, left, and right. Boom. Our upfitter helped us out with that, and we've been running that ever since. Unless the new 600 or 650 controller coming out, they might have those built in. I'm not sure, but our agency loves them. Also, I know on our joystick controllers now, we've got some tie-ins where we can turn the saw on off that. Again, something to think about with your controllers for safety. Trying to keep the eyes on the road instead of always worried about what the controller screen's looking like. Here's some examples of some sensors. This is a drop tailgate spreader sensor coming off the tailgate shaft there. Very vulnerable position. I mean, if you nick a mailbox or something on the side of your truck on that side, or a big branch, you can definitely mess these things up. So just think about where the components are, maybe add a guard in there, if you will, something to save you headaches down the road. the big thing we found out with our drop tailgate spreaders is the size of the auger. Obviously, the bigger auger you have, the more material it's going to convey out to the spinner, right? We had a really rough time getting down to a minimum of 200, pounds per lane, meaning at circuit one on the auger, that big old 9-inch was still just chugging it out. Sometimes we didn't get it down to 300 pounds per lane mile. So on those really small events, you don't need much material, and you want to get less than 400 or 300. It might be difficult for you to do that, depending on your speed of your pump, the output of your pump, the flow of your pump, whatnot. But just something to think about if you're running drop tailgate spreaders and different size augers. The bigger your auger it is, the harder it is going to be to achieve lower pounds per lane mile. That's what we found anyways. Your live bottom chucks or sanders, as a lot of people call them, materials conveyed a lot of different ways. Whether you got a chain, belt over a chain, some of them have dual augers. We have a lot of those in our V boxes, but a lot of the live bottom trucks have doors in the back of them. And when you calibrate that particular machine with that particular V box in there, you want to mark down where your door is, where your setting is. And sometimes it might be a different setting for sand or salt. I don't know if you can see my pointer on there while I'm doing that, but the bottom picture shows difference between opening for sand and salt. So that's what I'm trying to describe there. I got some videos embedded here. I don't know if we're going to have time to do those, so I'm just going to bypass those for now. If we have time, we'll talk about that. If not, I'll give you the links. But so again, liquid calibration, simple graduated container. You can get an old, we got these out of our wash rack from our soap. Clean them out. They got graduations on the barrels. Pretty simple to use for your liquid calibration. You're probably gonna have different valves and fittings and cam locks and all that good stuff. But once you make them up, keep them with the barrel, keep them with your container. You got them for next year. Just so you know going in, if you're gonna calibrate liquids, you're probably gonna need some different size fittings, whether they're male or female. Again, basically what I just said. You can see my crew looks real happy there. Doing a catch test on our old slip-in for our anti-ace unit. But again, you're doing a catch test. You want to know how many gallons you're getting in that barrel. Put it back into the controller, whatever it may be, and controller basically will do the math. Do another catch test to make sure it's accurate, make sure everything's set up right, and you should be pretty good to go. Just some pictures of some of our older controllers we started with after the sander valves, and some of our newer stuff. I already showed you our Rexroth. We've had Microtechs. We've had Storm Guards. It's basically, honestly, what I tell everybody: whatever you have the best support for in your area, whomever you feel most comfortable with. I believe all these companies make great stuff. It's basically the support, parts, supplies, all that good stuff to consider. But again, all good stuff and very reliable at most times. Flow meters, I touched on this maybe earlier, but again, your flow meter is basically the brains when it comes to liquids. It feeds back to the controller about how many gallons either per ton or how many gallons per lane mile that you're trying to achieve. These can be finicky sometimes. Sometimes you got to change them out. Our mechanics are always honest about flushing those things out. If we don't have an event for a week or two, go out back, run those things. If you do have a bypass in the system, flush them out, flush them out. A lot of them have some sensitive components internally. And if they sit around a lot, especially with salt brine in them, they will kind of get kind of crusty on you. And sometimes you do have to replace them. So again, just things to think about maintenance wise for flow meters. Again, every manufacturer is going to make components a little differently. They're going to mount them differently. Maybe you can give them some feedback on where to mount them. So number one, they're accessible. Number two, you can maintain them a lot easier. So just things to think about if you're going to upgrade to, automated controllers would be the best word. Liquid valves. If you guys are using liquids, keep those valves moving, keep them exercising, just like a water department. You want to You want to exercise valves as much as you can. Those things can get crusty on you. You can have failures. We've been pretty lucky with the Banjo product. Not that the other products out there ain't any good, but in our area, we've had really good luck with these and very dependable. All right, another video. So one other thing I'd like to touch on today is I think a lot of times we overlook not only calibrating granular liquids, but if you're running a joystick or any type of electronic controller, what we found when we went to a joystick controller, we felt like we lost a lot of feel or finesse when you're trying to raise your underbody up and down the wing plow, the front plow. In our area, we don't use front plows that often. Our underbody can keep up with most events. And now with the addition to our mid-mounted wings, we hardly ever mount a front plow. We still have a front plow for every truck in case we get overwhelmed or you get a rate of snow that's coming down too quick. But again, for us, our vendor, Rexroth, you can go into that controller head, into the controller, pull up your joystick that's tied in there, if it's compatible again, and you can really adjust the speed of the component, whether it's your wing or your underbody, and you can also adjust the feel for it, how touchy it is, if you will. And we found this to be pretty advantageous. Try to get all our operators to do this at the beginning of the season. I don't think they all do, but I think once they learn about it and they can really adjust things and customize to the way they like it, it's really been a big bonus for us. So just think about things besides granular and liquid to calibrate in your fleet. Again, with our Rexroth setup, it ties right into their controller. You go into the settings. We have a video for this as well. We did about, it's probably been 5 or 6 years ago now. I still believe it's pretty accurate in there. If not, it's, contact your supplier, see what you can do about that if you've never tried this before. All right. Another thing that you need to calibrate, or you should calibrate or think about calibrating, is your pavement temperature sensors. If you're running these, I can't emphasize this enough. We live and die by the road temp, right? It's not really what's going on up here. It could be, again, in this picture to the right, 15 degrees difference between the road temp and the air temp. So we live and die by the road temp, and different road temps, different materials, asphalt, concrete, they're all different temperatures. You get different readings, but that's what you live and die by. Look at any chart from any agency, and for application recommendation, it's basically your pavement temp and what type of precept's coming down now. But big thing to look at, we've been running these road watch systems for years. We found out over the years, if you don't check these, they will either get out of calibration, which even 1 or 2 degrees is huge, right? Or they're not working at all. So we bought a system here to the right in this right-hand fixture. You pull these internal guts out of this thing hanging off the mirror. You're gonna laugh, but if you haven't done this before, that little piece of black up there, you keep it in the freezer till you're ready to go, and drop this in the machine, and it'll check that thing whether it's accurate or not. Again, we found most of ours are pretty accurate from year to year. Sometimes we do have to adjust them, and which this machine for this particular manufacturer will. You can adjust it and get it back to where it's correct. So if you do have one of those, perfect example this morning, I was coming in, my road was shooting 35 degrees. I got up near work, it was down to 33, and we were getting rain and sleet. Another degree or two, it could have been really bad for all of us. Again, 1 or 2 degrees can mean a difference. So definitely check the calibration, if you can, of your manufacturer on your road temperature sensors. We're currently running it's a new system. Again, I don't want to advertise for anybody in here, but basically our new road temperature sensors, we have 2 now, should have 2 more coming in hopefully by the end of the season. But it not only gives you road temp, but it's showing you friction as well, and that's been huge for us to help our operators have tools to make decisions. And this season has been perfect for that, because a lot of our events start out as rain, we can't pre-treat, and then when do you start applying material? Is the road really getting icy? How much friction do you have? So things to think about, and things to really check your systems out for calibration. A lot of systems are closed loop. I do believe that's the most accurate. We've had the best luck with those, but some systems are open loop. So make sure you understand that before you calibrate. A lot of these controllers will ask you if it's closed loop or open loop, if you have this sensor or that sensor. So just things to think about when you're setting your controller up. You're entering your data that's asking for you in those controllers. Yeah, we've had calibration issues. We pulled our hair out. We still get probably every event, one of our controllers is showing an error. And I simply ask our operators when it's safe to do so, either pull over, get a screenshot of that area, send it to me and the mechanics. Sometimes it's simple as a loose cable. Sometimes it's very bad. It's a broken green wire, if you will. If there's any mechanics watching this, I know you guys love green wires with all the salt and the corrosive materials that we use during the winter. And it turns wires green, and it seems like that stuff just grows throughout the network of the truck. But again, just try to be patient. Most controllers, if you really can't get a feedback sensor to work or something, you can swap them in the manual mode, get through the event, make sure everything's safe, right? Safety first. But again, you will have some issues either calibrating or while you're operating some of these controllers. Again, support's huge here. Once you figure out one or two of them, it's usually pretty easy to figure out. Here's some screenshots. Even when you're setting up to calibrate, you may get this at the beginning of the season, which is perfect. It's time to try to fix it, right? But as you can see, check cable, RCA failure, solid under at, gate too low, max too high. We get all kinds of errors when we're out anti-icing. If you're calling for more than probably 45 gallons lane mile in older trucks, that the hydraulic pumps can't keep up to the speed, even if it's 30 miles an hour you're trying to achieve to stick with traffic to anti-ice. Sometimes, depending on the capability of your piece of equipment, it won't be able to keep up with that. So that controller is going to tell you, hey, you're not putting out 45 gallons of lane. You're probably doing 35 or 40, whatever the guess may be. It's not what you're asking for. So these things can really save you a lot of headaches. Yeah, they drive you nuts sometimes with some of the errors, but again, it's a great tool to have in your toolbox. We found calibrating our controllers, the newer ones, get the controller head out of the cab, especially when you're doing training with more than two people. Try to get two or three or more people in your cab, right? Yeah, that's fun. We all know how that goes. So here's a picture of, we just asked the vendor for a longer cable, took the head out, got a mount, like a C-clamp mounted table, and you can get more eyes on it than you could with just that controller being up into the truck, if that makes sense. So our Rex Rouse supplier started doing this when we started making videos. And to be honest with you, the only reason we started making videos was we typically only calibrate once, maybe twice a year, to either recheck our settings, whether material we're flowing, or if we have a mechanical failure halfway, sometime throughout the season, the winter season, you got a new pump that goes in or something like that, new valve, you definitely want to recheck the calibration, because that totally makes everything flow a little bit different at times. It can definitely affect the calibration of your controller. So just things to think about. But this cable thing was huge for us. There's not probably one operator that doesn't use this, especially if they have more than one or two people working on the truck at a time when they calibrate. Easy way to calibrate for bounce and scatter. I know that sounds kind of weird, but in Michigan, the DOT's done some great work for over 50 years now. Back in the 70s, they started doing some catch tests and some bounce and scatter tests. So what we did, we had a workshop, probably is about good 10 years ago now, but my good friend Mark Cornwell helped us paint this grid out back of the yard. So just visually to see how many pounds of lane mile are coming out and how much salt is actually getting to where you need it to get. So again, another form of calibration. Either number one, you probably want to slow your spinner down. Number two, you probably want to slow your speed down. So I got a picture here, I think coming up here, shows you the truck. He's spreading salt. He's trying to keep it within that lane. We had a little fun. We painted a penalty box on either side. If you have a footprint, a big enough parking lot to do this in, it's a great visual tool for your operators and your management. I mean, hopefully your managers are getting involved. The buy-in should be all the way across the board. But for us, this was huge. The other thing was for trying to calibrate your trucks and spreading material, pre-wetting versus just dry material, right? We always preach pre-wet as much as you can in material, less bounce and scatter. Even if you're going 30 miles, 35 miles down the road, speed's a huge factor when the material's coming out and it's dropping, right? So visually, this was perfect for us. We ran trucks through their dry, and we ran them through their pre-wetted, and the operators could visually see where the material was supposed to be staying on the road and how much it was bouncing off the road with the dryer stuff. So this slide's been around probably since the 70s. A typical 2-lane road, typical dry salt, probably running about 30 miles an hour. I'm guessing you're going to lose at least 30% of your salt off the either into the gutter line or off to the shoulder of the road. It's not doing you any good. The salt should be in the center of that road, and hopefully traffic can work and start creating that brine. If it's not pre-wetted, do its thing. So they tried running truck back in the 70s again, and back to pre-wetted salt. They found at whatever mile per hour was, I'm guessing 25, 30, you're only going to lose 4 to maybe 5% of your material if you're doing right down the crown of the road. Again, typical 2-lane road. We've got lanes as wide as 5 lanes. Sometimes we got to make 2 different passes depending on how much material we're putting down. But again, just think about dry salt, 30% you're losing. Pre-wetted salt, hopefully on a good day, you're only losing 4 to 5%. So they not only did this back in the 70s, but they did this test, and I think this is 2012. You can still pull this up. I'm not going to bore you with all the fun details of this, but they basically were running different materials, different speeds, and different chutes. The biggest thing I learned from this study over the 1970 studies was the speed. If you could decrease your speed even by 5 miles an hour, it's going to help keep that material wherever you're trying to place it. At the end of the day, it's going to be on the road, not off the road or in the gutter where it's doing you no good. So just think about kind of a visual calibration with granular materials and your speeds. And look this up if you want to. It's out there for everybody. But we always talk about balance and scatter using best practices. This is a perfect example of why we should pre-wet our salt. A good buddy Mark DeVries shared me this slide, and it's a balancing act, right? You got sustainability and you got safety. I think safety should be number one in my mind, sustainability, but you got all these other things: the environment to consider, society, commerce. Commerce has got to flow, and you got the economy. Society, everybody wants to get there yesterday. Everybody wants to do 10, 15 miles an hour with a speed limit, right? So can't be everywhere at once. But again, it's a huge balancing act on trying to do the right thing when it comes to saving materials, whether it's granular or liquid, or over applying, thinking you're doing the right thing. And really, at the end of the day, you're probably not. Yeah, the road's probably going to be safe, but you might have used a quarter, half, twice as much material as you really needed. Where's that material going at the end of the day? Most of it's running off into our streams and rivers. We all know what salt does. It's heavier, not good for our streams and rivers. So we're trying to minimize our impact. So our kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews, whatever you might have, whoever you might love, even if you're just a simple hunter or fisherman, just think about the impacts that the chemicals have that we're using to try to make things safe. Again, it's tough. It's a balancing act sometimes, and every event's different. Sometimes you got to use more material. Perfect example, last week, we were 200-300 pounds of lame oil wasn't working in Farmington Hills, Michigan, when you get freezing rain. We had to go up probably 400 or 500 pounds of lame oil certain times just to make things safe for the traveling public. So again, just try to keep in mind, best practices are huge in any maintenance thing, whether it's winter maintenance, summer maintenance, whatever. Try to be flexible as you can, but at the end of the day, you want to try to be as efficient as you can. We're all struggling with staff, hiring people. if you can get your staff to buy into best practices, especially in winter maintenance when it comes to calibration and speeds and application rates and all that stuff, they're huge. They really are. For us, our resources is everybody listening. It's our team. It's a team thing. Again, top left picture, we're doing seminars. That was probably 10, 12 years ago. We hosted a winter workshop. Back then, we only had one liquid truck that was anti-ice, and that's the truck in the background there. We were pretty proud of that. We've really grown since then. We're a big liquid user on the warmer events. Got Joe here on the right. He's awesome. He's a really good team player. And again, it's just all about teamwork, everybody working together. And if you're a manager or supervisor moving up through the ranks, it's trying to get that buy-in, get everybody on the same page. Sometimes it's difficult, but just at the end of the day, do the best you can. I think Allison, here's some of our links that I just kind of threw together the last couple of years. I'll keep this up here. Again, you can email me anytime you want. I thought I had some contact info in here somewhere. If not, I'm sure Allison will post it up for you. Be happy to help you anytime I can. I don't think we really have a time to play in these videos, Allison. I think the shortest one's like 10 minutes. Did you just want to go into questions, or what do you want to do?
Yeah, let's, if you want to go maybe to that page where you have the links. I think
there.
I'll just, yeah, leave that up for a second, and then I'll just tell people that I will put those, well, I guess people have them right now. I'm just trying to think if they might have to copy them kind of down. So maybe what I'll do is send out to everybody who's watching live right now an email, kind of a follow-up with these links. So you can just kind of go one click and you don't have to worry about copying all the letters and numbers down, right? So
yeah, you can just throw my name and email in there too. Some of the stuff, I believe it's updated, but if it's not, I'll try to help you in any way I can.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, let me look back here at the chat. So we're a little bit ahead of folks watching. So I'm just gonna give a reminder to everybody, if you are on the live stream right now and you have any questions for Brian, you can type them into the chat feature on YouTube directly. And then also you can email me wiswise@gmail.com. So we'll just hang out here for a minute and see if any questions come in through either of those platforms. Otherwise, I really wanted to say, Brian, thank you so much. I loved the emphasis on all the different types of calibration, like getting into calibrating your pavement temperature sensor, right? Because it's like all of these tools we're relying on, if we're not getting accurate information, we can't really make the best decisions. And that penalty box, that was great. I'm going to see if we can get in Wisconsin, APWA has a snowplow rodeo, right, for the state.
Yep.
And
Yep.
You've got I actually got to participate in it last year. So, the driving the truck around, there's the safety check, but I think it'd be really powerful for us to see if we could set up just like a fake kind of stretch of 2-lane there and do that.
Yeah,
visual.
it's huge.
Mm-hmm.
It was huge for me. I'm a visual guy, but it was also, I think it was eye-opening for a lot of our even seasoned veterans to see the difference between dry, pre-wet salt, which that's pretty much our policy now. Unless we have a mechanical failure, we pre-wet all the time, but it was huge.
Yeah. And I know there's still some communities out there that are pre-salting, like with dry rock salt instead of brine sometimes. And it's just like, it kills me, right? Because I know, one, there's gone some scatter, and then if it's before the storm and you've got traffic going over that, there's even more flying out. So I think that visual would be really powerful for people. And then you also brought up the point of what is your speed, right? Because just the manual spreaders, right, are calibrated for a given speed. And if you're going faster
Correct.
than that, then you're putting less down. If you're going slower, more.
Correct.
All right. So let's see. I don't see that any questions have come in from folks right now. It shows my bit rate is a little slow, so there's potentially a delay in there. But I think we're good. If Brian, if you're all right with me just sharing your email out, and then people can always ask you later on.
Yep. And they could pull any of those videos up on YouTube. At least all the stuff that our city has made. It's all on YouTube, and it's all there for everybody to learn from and help.
Great. Well, I really appreciate the resources that you've made, the work that you've done, and I know retirement is in the near future. But thank you for continuing to be a resource and a champion for this. So
no, I'm hoping to stick around and keep training for a while. I really do enjoy this, and I think it does help people. And at the end of the day, I want to leave things better than what I found it, if you will, or at least try to keep things good, So
yeah. Well, thank you. You definitely are. So thank you, Brian. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I will send a follow-up email with the links and Brian's contact information. And hope people can tune in again next month. All right. Take care, Brian.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Like I said, this is a great resource. I have your slides, so I've got, I think, those links already. I'll just kind of copy and paste those in, and then kind of double check and maybe just ground truth that things work. And if they don't, I'll try to figure it out. And if not, I'll shoot you an email.
Are you going to be in Nebraska?
I don't think so. It's hard for me to get funding to go out of state. So I was able to do Colorado. Because I presented, but well, have fun with everybody.
If things change, let me know. And again, I'm between me and you, I'm gonna be sticking around part-time, so I'll be training hopefully for a while. I really do enjoy this. So if you need anything, like if you want to expand on liquid calibration or liquids, I love talking about liquids too. So if you need anything like that, just let me know, and if I can make it work, I'll make it work. Okay.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I could definitely see us doing just something kind of really targeted on liquids, because I don't have really great resources. I mean, their resources are pretty slim. Like you said, it's like people hunting down things on YouTube. So that would be great. All right. Well, take care, Brian.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.